where people are going to speak, I'll very well listen, but maybe there's only a small part of the talks which would be relevant to me. But I've been pleasantly surprised, and let me tell you a little bit about what this talk is not about. So I've been interested in looking at formation of biopolymer hairpin loops, which have been stabilized by polarons, which are distortions between interactions between transported electrons and phonons. And these essentially, if you study the mechanics of these, then in some cases you get the racket shapes, which are very similar to the ones which were shown in the first talk by Jose Vico. For people who are interested in gene regulatory networks and morphogenesis, we've been studying the role of time-delayed feedback loops, and we show in some of our works that there are some novel pathways that will take place if you incorporate a mathematical model which allows for time delays. This is a topic which I'll not talk about, which is essentially if you take a ribbon and you pinch it between thumb and scissors and pull it along the length, then it essentially forms a helix. You can quantitatively compute, quantitatively measure the radius and the pitch of this helix as a function of your parameters, and then you can put in a very simple elastoplastic model for deformation to understand it quantitatively. There was an exciting and a very interesting talk by Mark Shelley yesterday, our chairperson, and I'm interested in chromosome oscillations in mitosis, not the types of the spindle poles, but essentially the segregating chromosomes which start from the prophase and sort of go on till the end of the anaphase. I'm a soft matter theorist, so I work on problems involving polymers, colloids, and such. And so our recent interest is essentially if you take a mixture of long and short chain molecules and you have an atmosphere and have an interface which is open to the atmosphere, then as a function of time and in equilibrium, the small molecules will always migrate to the surface. In many industrial applications, these basically lead to a functional loss, and therefore we've been thinking of strategies of how you can model this behavior and therefore limit the segregation behavior in these mixtures. And we've extended our studies to studying binary polymer gels. So maybe some of this would be interesting to you. And trust me, I did not know that Axel Voigt, who is going to be talking about this, but had I known it, I would have prepared a talk on this, which is we look at orientational order on curved geometries, and we can minimize shape and texture simultaneously. So I'll very much look forward to his talk. So what this talk is going to be about, I'll be talking about optical manipulation of oil drops. Then I'm going to be talking about understanding shapes and shape changes in such drops. And then finally I'll talk about, hopefully if I have time, I'll talk about solving the coupled shape flow problem in this system. And I've been very interested in the very exciting and very fantastic talks by Saverio and Francois, and I'd be very interested to talk to them later on. Okay, so what's the experimental situation? If you have a liquid droplet, you can use the radiation pressure from a laser beam to push on these droplets. And this shows a droplet which is trapped at the objective of a laser. And then, and normally nothing happens because the interfacial tension of just a regular water droplet is about 10 power minus 2 newtons per meter. The force constant of an optical trap is about 10 power minus 6 in the micronewton per meter range. And so therefore, K over sigma is 10 power minus 4. So the optical forces are too weak to actually deform the droplet. However, you can take an oil-water emulsion, and there these chimeric molecules have a water-loving head and a water-hating tail, so they will assemble into forming these micelles, spherical micelles. And as you keep on changing your temperature, or in case of if you add anionic surfactants, then you can actually go through a phase transition where you don't have water in oil, but you have oil in, not oil, I said the other way around, oil in water, but water in oil. And in this case, you form a reverse or an inverted micelle. Now, if you plot the surface tension as a function of this temperature and increasing concentration, then near a microemulsion phase transition, that's around this point, the surface tension falls to very ultra low values, 10 power minus 5. you can bring this about by making a solution of heptane brine and an anionic surfactant, and then at this point optical forces can compete with surface tensions and therefore deform the droplet. So, these are experiments which came out of Colin Bain's lab. So you have what is shown here are the laser beams, and a drop trapped between in 2 laser beams, 3 laser beams, and 4 laser beams, and you can actually shape and sculpt these drops to form dumbbells, triangles, and cubes. Now this is a confocal image, so therefore you're looking at it from the top, and so therefore you do not know exactly what the 3D shape of this droplet looks like. And essentially, when Colin came to us, he said, "Oh well, I think it's basically like a triangular drop, and it's spherical at the bottom, or just extends triangular." And I said, "We said that is not possible." And he said, "Well, why don't you actually model it?" So this is our humble attempt at modeling. So what is going on is you've got a surface tension term which is causing the droplet to be spherical. But on the other hand, you've got an optical term, optical pressure term, radiation pressure, coming from the laser beam, and a competition of these two is actually causing the drop to deform. So we start with a model which we call a spoke model. Essentially, we mesh a spherical surface by drawing radial spokes from the center of this sphere outward. And these spokes are not collinear with the local normal to the surface. So that's a little aside that you want to keep in mind. It's going to be normal when things are spherical, but once things starts deviating from the spherical shape, they are no longer normal. Okay, so you've got the interfacial tension, you've got an internal pressure coming from the fluid, and then you've got the optical pressure. So therefore, a balance of this, you can set it up. You can write down fictitious Langevin dynamics type equations for individual spokes. You can impose a volume conservation because you have an incompressible fluid, and then you can crank the machinery and then eventually get the drop shape given a particular laser power. So what is plotted here, these lines which you see here,
this is evolving under a volume constraint?
Yeah, under a volume constraint. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So, what I don't know if you can see these field lines over here are essentially the shapes of a Gaussian beam or Gaussian laser beam which is passing through the droplet, and you can see that the droplet essentially traces out the intensity profile pretty well for low deformations. Okay, so oops. Right. So sorry. So this is the droplet deformation under a single laser beam. So think about it, you're only looking at it from the top. However, if you look at a 3-dimensional view, then this is what happens. It essentially deforms to form an American football, and then later on, as you keep on increasing the power, then it deforms to this shape, which is like a dumbbell. And what is plotted here is the mean curvature along on the surface of this. So it starts from being very high towards the poles, but then it goes to near zero and somewhere negative at the focus of the laser beam. So how do we actually quantify this? We say that, okay, what we are going to do is we're going to look at the maximum projection of this radius in the xy plane, and we're going to plot it as a function of our laser parameters. So there are a plethora of parameters. If you've got a PhD student, you set him on a problem, he'll vary the parameters and give you 6 figures. So this is the initial drop radius being varying from 2 to 5 as a function of optical power, the numerical aperture of the laser beam, and then going from 1 to 1.3. It has a strong variation with the interfacial tension, and therefore, and also the difference between the inside and the refractive index of the material. We are only changing the refractive index of the material outside, fluid outside. However, you can actually compress all of this data into a single graph where you define a number, which we call this an optocapillary number, by balancing the radiation pressure and the interfacial tension, or in the interfacial pressure. And then accept this exponential factor of numerical aperture, you can calculate this formula exactly. And the nice thing is that you see that the data collapses pretty nicely onto a single curve, and the deviation starts to take place around a value of nd equal to 1. And you can look at this similarly, saying for since the ND is proportional to P naught, this basically tells you that for very high optical powers, you're going to deviate away from the linear regime, and you're going to start getting nonlinear effects. Okay. Right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
In the experiment, if you had a single laser beam,
Yeah.
and you're trying to form something with the waste, I can imagine that for a bit off center, so you had a bit more volume at the top, it might just kind of suck itself up. And
Yeah, sometimes these things escape out of the laser beam as well.
Is there a feedback from this to keep things in the experiments to keep them centered?
I do not know of this. I don't know that, but there might be some clever optics which they use to keep it. But my talking to my colleagues, I think sometimes these things get out of the laser beam, and in fact sometimes they turn the laser off, power down, to look at how quickly these things get out of the beam in order to calculate the optical spring constant of the laser beam. Anyway, so if you look at the droplet, from the top, then you can see a spherical shape, but on the from the side you start seeing these different shapes. You can view the dumbbell-like shapes we showed in experiments from the top, but on the side views you have pretty different shapes, which looks like a butterfly maybe. And then you can have three laser beams and 4 laser beams and so on. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to just show you a video. So what is happening here is a drop deforming under 4 laser beams. You start initially increasing the power up to 0.12, and it starts deforming pretty much into a dumbbell. Then there are 4 beams passing through it, and you start symmetrically moving these to 4 different corners, and you start forming this cubical droplet, which looks pretty cubical from the top, but then from the 3-dimensional view you start getting large regions of negative curvature, negative mean curvature. We are not completely off from the experiments. These are confocal images of droplets of about 4 micron size, and you can see the tops look like this, the sides look like this, but so we do not really have those large regions of negative curvature for these powers, but for higher values of optical powers we do actually see that. Now if you start pulling these droplets further and further, what's going to happen is that this dumbbell is going to start separating and form 2 liquid droplets, but they're connected by a very narrow liquid tether. Now you probably don't see this, it's clear here, but here are 3 small droplets connected to a larger droplet by means of a tether. And how do you actually make sure that I'm not fibbing here is you can actually you can release one of these droplets from one laser beam, and you can see it recoil, and so therefore they must be connected by a liquid tether. Right. Okay. So we're going to be doing the mechanics of these lipid tethers. If the starting point is looking at the Helfrich free energy for a closed membrane, and you start sigma 0 is the intrinsic surface energy, kappa is your bending modulus, and kappa bar is the Gaussian is the modulus corresponding to Gaussian curvature. We are looking at closed membranes, so therefore this term does not matter via the Gauss-Bonnet theorem, and so if curvatures are positive, then the C1 and C2 essentially denote the principal curvatures of the system, and C0 is the spontaneous curvature. So if you've got a lamella, if you've got a unilamellar phase between an oil and water, then you're going to have a C0 non-zero, and if it's bilayered, then of course C0 is 0. So you can set this free energy up for a tether. You can find the radius of a stable tether, and it turns out to be the ratio square root of kappa divided by twice sigma, sigma being the interfacial tension. You can actually compute this for measured values, and find out that it's about 45 nanometers. You can find the tensile force required to pull out such a tether, and you can plot all of this as a function of temperature. So why are we interested in doing this? Remember, as we are going through the phase transition temperature, the micelle changes from being a positive curvature to a negative curvature. So therefore, this allows you to actually change, to look at tensile force variations as a function of temperature. So these are various quantities which are being plotted: the sigma, the radius, the tensile force, And this is a plot which shows the measured value as opposed to the theoretical curve. And we can use this system to actually look at liquids being pumped from one drop to the other. You know the Laplace pressure falls off as 1 over r. The optical fields create negative pressures in the droplets, which would be proportional to 1 over r squared. And then you can, and this video here shows essentially a droplet being split into 3. So the central droplet is being draining into these 3 different droplets, so which are connected by tethers and has the focus of 3 laser beams. So I'm going to wait till it finishes. How do we do this? Well, we consider pipe flow, we consider the motion of an entire thread, and we look at purling instability. So here are our, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go through this very quickly. We assume that we've got a fixed radius tube. We assume axisymmetric steady-state Stokes flow. We use a slender approximation, so this pipe itself is flowing with a velocity v sub s. We solve the inner problem, which will be a Poiseuille flow. We solve the outer problem, which is essentially a Stokes flow. We match velocities at the interface by matching the tangential stresses. And then if you worry, and so this is basically the solution. This is the inner solution. This is the outer solution. You match the tangential stresses. You get the surface velocity. And you can plot this as a function of r over r being the radius of the tube. And you can see that much of the flow is actually not confined inside the thread, quite simply. Most of the flow is actually outside the thread. And I'm just going to close with one small simple thing, which is how do you actually what happens to the normal force balance? Turns out if you actually take into account the normal force balance, then you cannot have a radius which is constant as a function of the axial distance. It varies as a function of z, and we obtain an approximate analytical solution for this r of z. We obtain an exact numerical solution for r of z, and then this is a variation as a function of the volume flow inside the pipe, and it goes so the radius goes down as a function of increasing volumetric flow. And it essentially sets you a limit on the amount that you can pull a thread before it starts going to, the radius essentially goes to 0. So why are we interested in this? Well, this was some earlier work where people are actually interested in making, Jean-François Joanny's group, where people are interested in actually pumping different types of molecules from one vesicle to another. These are vesicles as opposed to liquid droplets. And you can actually cause reactions and watch them at a single molecule level. So I'm out of my time, so what have I showed? I've showed that ultra-low interfacial fluids can be deformed by laser beams. I can model the shape and shape changes, balancing radiation and radiation pressures. You can create a network of femtoliter drops, and then these are stabilized by bending modulus. You can go through a phase inversion temperature, and then we've solved essentially the problem of a flow through this oil nanothread. I want to thank my collaborators, Alex Hargreaves, who did lots of the experiments now at Leeds, Joshua Bull, who was a project student who did part of the theoretical work, and all of these were done in Colin Bain's lab. And thank you very much for your attention, and thanks to the organizers once again. Thank you.